My name is Alan Yim, and my research paper is on life expectancy and homeownership rates by zip code in the state of Hawaii. Reason for this study: I was born and raised in Hawaii. I'm still very much attached to this state. I consider it my home. And, it's really shocking me when I learn about inequities in life expectancy in Hawaii that can be seen with casual observation. Now, this here's a map of Oahu just to show you just the inequities are the differences between life expectancy by zip code. And if you notice that, the darkest areas are around Hawaii Kai, and then right next door to it. And so right next door, there's bright yellow, and that yellow shows a significant decrease in life expectancy. Whereas in Hawaii Kai, you have about 85 and a half, you have a little bit over 85 and a half years to, you know, for our life expectancy. But then going over, just driving over into Waimanalo, you lose almost 10 years off of your life expectancy if you were to live in Waimanalo. So so through this project, I wanted to see if there was a way that could be associated with the life expectancy inequalities within Hawaii. And so I came up with, I decided to look into home ownership as a measure for that. So research question and hypothesis: does home ownership rates have an impact on differences in life expectancy by zip code? And my hypothesis was that as home ownership increases, life expectancy also increases. So for literature and theory, so the base of this theory comes through social determinants of health, which are the conditions in the environment where people live, work, play, and age. Social determinants of health theory examines the context and conditions that contribute to health outcomes beyond receiving health care. Social determinants of health is a framework to examine health disparities and equities. Life expectancy is a measure to gauge overall health of community. Large-scale geographic examination of life expectancy on a national and state level do not provide adequate resolution of data for health officials and policymakers to identify inequities and disparities for small geographic areas like that of sub-county size. So the sub-county assessment of life expectancy, our scale project, provides a method to focus on this missing level of data resolution by giving, a view of data in a format that can be where you can recognize inequities, such as the map that I showed you earlier. So you can identify zones that policymakers and health officials can say, well, what's going on? And, start asking questions to at least recognize that there are inequities. And instead of saying, oh, well, everyone lives longer in Hawaii, it's like, well, there's obviously areas in Hawaii where people aren't living as long as others. So what is the reason for that? And people can look into researching that. So, and then for home ownership itself, it's an important component of wealth and may provide an impact on health and life expectancy in general. So data and methods for me, my dependent variable, I picked life expectancy by zip code in Hawaii from 2008 to 2012. And this data was created by a previous paper that looked into actually establishing a scale method towards determining life expectancy within Hawaii at the sub-county level. And then the independent variable would be the owner-occupied housing rate from 2008 to 2012. And this data came from the United States Census and the American Community Survey with the 5-year estimate tranche from 2008 to 2012. So the method I used was a cross-sectional study and a simple linear correlation analysis of Hawaii life expectancy and home ownership rates from 2008 to 2012. Now, when I brought the data together on the life expectancy and homeownership rates going by zip code, uh, we didn't find any correlation between uh, homeownership rates for via the owner-occupied housing uh, category from the American Community Series and the life expectancy using the scale method. But there are significant standout areas within Hawaii where you look at like the the places with like the highest life expectancy with Kahala, Kuli'o, Oahu, and places like Hawaii Kai. You see 80 people are living 85 years, or their life expectancy is about 85 years, 87 years, and they're up in like the 80% home ownership rate. But also within that same life expectancy bracket, you see in areas like Macaulay, Mo'iliili, and Ala areas, which are pretty much the core, downtown Honolulu urban areas, and life expectancy is very high down there too, even though homeownership is below 40%. And when you look and you compare this to the U.S. average, which is about a 78.7 years for life expectancy overall, this is pretty high. And but then you see when you're looking at the zip codes that aren't doing so well, and you look at places like Ho'olehua and Molokai, despite having a high estimated homeownership rate that's above 85%, uh, you see that their life expectancy is still only 72.9 years, and so that's a very big discrepancy in how are places like Hawaii Kai and Kuli'o doing so well on their life expectancy, and yet there's Molokai, which has the highest estimated homeownership rate, and it's the lowest life expectancy in the whole state. So that brings up a question about what are we looking for, and how do we find out or identify where these inequities are coming from. So in conclusion, there was no correlation found between life expectancy and zip code. And for my study, there was a limited scope of data, and that's within the literature itself on scale. There's a lot of discussion and discourse about more states and more counties should start looking into implementing scale. Right now, I think there's only about 11 partners with the scale project from state and county governments to implement identifying life expectancy inequalities and discrepancies within the sub-county level. And so the more data we get, the easier or the more data is, the more discrepancies we find, and the more ways that people can research into why these discrepancies are happening. It was also something that we would improve on is creating a better measure for social determinants of health. Like only looking at home ownership just wasn't enough. And another issue is that home ownership represents like a level of wealth that maybe intercepts or like overrides any difference between if just being able to have a house and be secure in that housing. Like there's no distinction between, like it's a distinction without a difference, in that your life expectancy is going to be, or the impacts in your health are going to be less significant because you have housing security. And so that homeownership is also, and then homeownership itself also represents like a level of income. And so it's more like there's a package that, being able to afford a home signifies a lot more things that would signal that you're going to have better health outcomes than other people that wouldn't be able to afford one. And then another drawback of this study, or a drawback from this measurement, is that like it did not consider individuals that had housing insecurity or were, you know, homeless. And we know Hawaii has a pretty large homeless population, and so associated health outcomes with being housing insecure or homeless represent, a significant drop in your life expectancy. And neither neither data from the scale or the the U.S. Census take that housing status into consideration for this study. And so I think an expansion into housing insecure people and, you know housing insecure people within that, like being able to include them in zip codes, would show significant disparities and even more question, and would bring about more questions about why is this happening? How are there better ways to measure this before it becomes a life expectancy inequity? And so thank you for your time. And that was my research project.